Hi, this is Mark with Crew, and here are a few tips on leading the Guard study. So first, this study was left intentionally vague. Students are all across the board in their understanding of this topic, so we left it vague so that you would be able to take it where you need to go for your students. We don't want to tell the student how far is too far, but we want to help them to have a conversation about this over biblical principles with a godly person in their life to begin to guide them toward a right perspective in this area. You know your group. Feel free to take them wherever your students need to go on this. 2. Proverbs 4:23. It is a great verse, but translations tend to deal with this very differently. The NIV version is the one that we use, and it seems to phrase it the best for this study. So we would encourage you to use the NIV version of Proverbs 4:23. So the idea is that your heart is this spring from which you get your life. If you're going to set up camp near some water source, you're probably going to guard that water source, because if someone comes and poisons that water source, if it gets bitter or whatever, it can kill you. In the same way, your heart is like this bubbling spring from which you get life. If someone poisons that, your life is poisoned. So we got to guard our hearts carefully. And this romantic relationship thing is exactly the kind of place that our hearts get poisoned very often. So we want to be careful about who we allow in that close in our lives. 3. Tell your story. God has given you a story in this area, and we want to encourage you to talk about it. Talk about your successes, your failures. Talk about times when you gave your heart away too quickly, or maybe you have a story where you've guarded it well and it has been an issue. Either way, they need real life on this one. Our students will learn so much just by hearing real life stories in this area, so don't be shy about telling your story. 4. Follow their lead and ask good questions. The questions in the study are kind of open-ended and can go any direction. Don't be the steerer of the conversation in this one. Let them steer it. Let them take it where they need to go. You will learn a lot from your students if you allow them to talk about this issue. Things will come up you never thought to address, but if you're steering the conversation, then they might not come up at all. Of course, if they go way off course, gently steer it back to the general conversation about God's view of relationships. And frankly, you can just never go wrong when you listen to a student. They love to know that you care about them enough to let them talk and listen. 5. Talk about forgiveness and a fresh start. This study doesn't really touch much on guilt and shame and what if I've blown it. I guarantee there are people in your group that have blown it and that are thinking, oh, this study's not for me because I'm already too far gone. Don't let them sit in that. Talk early about the fact that God brings forgiveness for all things that have happened. And we can talk freely about this. Make sure they know that God's grace covers all sin. And we can always have a fresh start as we turn away from our sins and toward God. If you find that you'd like to talk more about this topic with your students, I highly suggest you do the sex study in Thrive Studies. It talks about all these things, including how to deal with that forgiveness and that guilt and shame area. It's excellent. Take your students through it. I know it's awkward to talk about sex, but they need to hear it, and you can really bless them by going through it. The small group leader tip of the week is this: listen well to your students. They need someone to listen to them, and you are the right person. Just listening and encouraging them shows them that you care about them, and it builds the relationship that you're trying to build. Practice eye contact, repeating what they say, and encouraging them to talk rather than just waiting until they finish talking so you can say what you want to say. Be a good listener. Those are tips for the Guard study. Thank you so much for investing in teenagers and helping them know more about Jesus. Have an awesome time leading your small group this week.